Hi, I'm Aidan Morales.
And I'm Yuriani and
And this is Crash Code Word History. No, hold on. This is not Crash Code Word History. It's just two kids copying it.
Anyway, chocolate, that tasty, sweet rectangle of goodness that we all love.
Well, most of us do. Look at UT and Demar.
Has a dark history behind it.
Basically, after this video, you'll feel guilty for eating it. Roll the intro! Sorry, John Green.
Chocolate is everywhere, from snack shops to grocery stores to even next to register, hoping you'll buy it on the impulse. Most bars range from the sweet and creamy to the bitter and dark.
Fun fact, the world's most expensive box of chocolates, excuse my friends, de Bourve et Galais Le Livre, sold for $550.
5 centuries ago, however, there was only bitter chocolate, and it wasn't in a bar form.
In fact, an average Joe like you and me wasn't even allowed to enjoy it.
Let's go to the not thought bubble.
The cacao bean is originally from the New World. In Central America, the Aztec Empire praised the bean as the fruit of the gods. The Aztec Empire lasted from about 1345 to 1521 AD.
Instead of biting into a good old Hershey's milk chocolate bar, not sponsored by the way, Aztec emperors drank cacao like coffee.
The drink was bitter and chock full of caffeine. The Aztecs believed cacao was a gift from Quetzalcoatl, the god of wisdom.
The beans were so sacred that it was even used as currency.
4 beans could get you a pumpkin, 10 could get you a rabbit, and another 10 could get you a knife to lady for some schoolie pooping.
The Aztec Empire was thriving. As long as they kept up their stable cacao bean economy, monarchy, and brutal human sacrifices to make sure they lived another day, everything should be good, right?
Wrong! Cacao's impact on world culture and trade goes far beyond the Aztec Empire. With the cacao bean alone, you can cover the entire rationale behind colonialism.
Thanks, not thought bubble. In order to fully see the effects of cacao, we need to cover a lot of history. Let's start with the first contact.
Considering the old world's history of taking and stealing and getting all the credit, it's no surprise that the Aztecs didn't get to keep cacao for very long.
Oh look, here comes Christopher Columbus and his crimes against the humanity.
Oh, now Hernan Cortez is here conquering and destroying an entire civilization.
Sorry, Aztecs. You should have learned how to forge iron.
Actually, the Aztecs had clubs adorned with obsidian blades which are sharpened at steel. They are so sharp that instead of tearing individual cells, they would separate groups of them apart. But that's besides the point!
After the giant bloodbath that was Spain conquering the Aztec Empire, Hernan Cortez discovered cacao beans and brought a few back to the Spanish court. With the beans that they had, they recreated the traditional Aztec drink.
Cocoa powder was mixed with water, spices, and sometimes corn puree. In order to amend the bitterness, they started to add sugar, honey, and agave to give it some sweetness. The Spanish fell in love with the drink and were practically addicted. And now that Spain pretty much owned the land where cacao grew, they imported cacao for the first time in 1585.
Spain now controlled the cacao market. Over European nations started getting hooked and more cacao was being imported. However, up until 1815, chocolate solids didn't exist.
The Dutch were the first to separate most of the cocoa butter, or fat, from the main product by using a chocolate press.
And in 1830, a confectionery in the United Kingdom created the first ever chocolate bar, mixed with milk and sugar. Milk chocolate.
Oops, okay. Gotta eat some of this chocolate. But importing a good is expensive. You have to produce it, pack it, ship it, get through customs, unpack it, and sell it. And transatlantic shipping wasn't all that cheap back then. You couldn't just load a few crates on a FedEx plane and call it a day. So what do?
Well, you find a cheaper and easier way to produce your good. And Europe is in luck. Here comes the scramble for Africa. From 1881 to 1914, Europe, as the name implies, literally scrambled for Africa. They saw the Africa continent as a ripe commercial opportunity. You could mine for diamonds, bore for oil, or grow several kinds of crops.
The continent was quickly divided among European powers, where they then exploited the resources.
Africa was also seen as an evolutionary backwards and undeveloped by the Europeans. The Europeans thought it was their job to take care of the continent until they were mature enough to govern themselves.
So, basically racism as an excuse to colonize. During European occupation, Ghana was owned by the British. Today, Ghana and the Ivory Coast produce most of the world's cacao.
See, to grow cacao, you need a pretty warm climate with relatively humid air and proper exposure to sunlight. Central America and parts of West Africa had similar climates, meaning the British could start growing cacao.
And now that the British had the technology and the market to produce solid chocolate bars, cacao became both popular and rather cheap. During this time, the three big chocolate companies, Hershey's, Nestle, and Mars, were founded.
Of course, after European occupation ended due to cost to resistance and the start of World War I, the continent was left in ruins with the now independent territories.
However, now that cacao was abundant, chocolate bars became a global commodity that the entire world was consuming.
Now, let's go to Ghana to see how our chocolate is being made.
Yep, no Willy Wonka or Oompa Loompas here. By the way, Gene Wilder Willy Wonka is the best. He will be missed. In order to keep prices competitive, cacao plantations in Ghana and the Ivory Coast used child slavery and really cheap labor, especially now that they aren't under the watch of the British.
These slaves ranged from 5 to 16 years old. However, not all plantations use slavery. Some cacao workers earn $2 per day.
Meanwhile, the chocolate industry is worth an estimated $101 billion.
Damn.
And including that, slaves are beaten and whipped if they work too slowly, aren't obedient, or attempt to escape. They are fed food with minimal nutritional value, typically corn, and they are crammed into tiny living quarters only to awaken to long, harsh workdays. The work is also a safety hazard since they use machetes to slice open the cacao pods, not a tool children should be wielding. Some slaves are even kidnapped and forced into labor. Basically, your chocolate is made using human trafficking.
Major chocolate companies are aware of this problem and even agreed to fight against unethically sourced cacao with the United Nations a few years back. However, nothing much has happened since.
And you know, escaped cacao slaves aren't exactly keen on seeing Milton Hershey's story being promoted as a triumphant miracle. Drissa, an escaped chocolate slave, says, quote, "When people eat chocolate, they're eating my flesh," end quote.
However, the situation isn't as grim as you think. Organizations like Fair Trade Organization certify certain brands if their goods are sourced ethically. Other independent chocolate companies make their own bars out of ethical sourced cacao to raise awareness about the subject.
And in February of 2018, the Higgins-Bowman law firm filed lawsuits against Hershey's, Nestle's, and Mars for failing to tell its consumers that their chocolate was sourced from unethical child labor.
You can also buy ethically sourced chocolate by finding the Fair Trade certified logo on the wrapper. And you can always boycott Hershey's, Nestle, and Mars in favor of other chocolates.
So really, just be conscientious about where your chocolate is coming from. Except your consumerist habits won't change chocolate's dark and bitter history. Thanks for watching. We won't see you next week.